Ready to begin? People settled? All right. First of all, are there any announcements? I have one if people don't. I mentioned at the... Whoa, am I echoing? I mentioned at the last meeting that the ALA is, American Library Association, is meeting in San Francisco the 25th of June through the 30th, and that it's available for us to attend, all or part of. Hillary has done an excellent job of making up a little handout that gives information, about the cost of ALA membership for trustees and the additional cost to join the special interest group, and then has gone through and given information about the cost to go to one day or all of the meeting. And she also highlighted some sessions that might be of interest to us to go to. I am planning on going, and I'm especially planning on going to the day on Friday at the St. Francis about trustees toolkit. What's it called? Nuts and bolts for trustees, from 9:30 to 4 or something. The ALA website is not necessarily easy to work your way through, but if you do a search, you can find it. Something about buying lunch and so forth. But anyway, you have that information. And are there any questions about that?
So, I would clarify trustee and commissioners.
Okay, trustees and commissioner. Trustees by any other name are called commissioners. All right. Moving along, on the other announcement from commissioners. All right, let's move to public appearances. Are there members of the public wishing to address the commission?
Yes, sir. May I use the overhead projector, please?
Cool. I'm waiting for them to put screens in big enough for me to be able to read.
Sorry.
I hope you can see that well. My name is Dwayne DeWitt. I'm from Roseland. I came to thank you because I've been seeing in some of the discussions you've been having that a Roseland branch library has come forward. I am a person who has great optimism, and that's why I continue to try to speak with government agencies about possibilities to make Roseland a better spot. This flyer that I've put up there is about Fayetteville, Arkansas. It's from 4 years ago at a national convention of the United States Environmental Protection Agency, the Brownfields Renewal National Conference. It was pointed out how the people in Fayetteville used a library to enhance the economic development of a disadvantaged area of their city. In this case, not only did they put a new library in, they set it up to put solar panels up on the roof and generate its own energy and then sell energy to other places in the community. So it's a really positive thing when a library can come forward. And if you have visionary, forward-thinking officials, they can find good ways for economic development to occur. I wanted to show you this from 18 years ago. This was, I don't see if that comes in so well. Let me see if we can focus it better. Well, it's not focusing so well, so I'll just tell you the story, and you don't have to look. The basic story was community members with then Supervisor Mike Riley were talking about how to help over in Roseland. One of the things in discussion at that time was a partnership with the different agencies, redevelopment, the city, water agency, and different governmental organizations. And then to put out a newsletter and to help along that Spassport Road corridor for people to understand what was occurring. And actually, these discussions first came up 35 years ago when they were planning to put together a Roseland redevelopment project area, which actually was empowered in 1984, 31 years ago. So I'm not just a person coming with a new idea. I'm basically just one who's keeping an old idea alive so that hopefully a library will come into that neighborhood and help those young people while I'm still alive. Last but not least on this, the county has bought that 7-acre portion of the Roseland Village Shopping Center that I've been referring to, and they have a building on it in which they're going to be opening it to the community, and a portion of that could be a temporary library. I know a lot of people who are willing to donate books and get started and just do it as a free community library and see how we can make it happen. So we're talking about that already on the Roseland Village Task Group. I hope you folks will keep us in mind and realize with 3 taxpayers' entities, the Junior College District, this Library Commission District, and the county, something positive could happen there. Economic development for Roseland, and we could all read about it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
I'll put this back away.
Any comments from commissioners?
Going once, going twice. The desk
Any other
down.
public announcements, public appearances? All right. Next item on the agenda is Library Advisory Board and Friends of the Library reports. I don't believe we have any scheduled. Are there any members of the Friends from any cities here? I see none. We'll move on to commission reports. We'll go through these fairly quickly, but I'd like to start by saying the people who volunteered to plan the, I've heard it called by various names, the the commission powwow, to the commission retreat, to the commission event that we're hoping to have in August, or probably August at this point. We'll be meeting within the next week or two to start planning. And I believe, and if somebody in the room wants to say I'm wrong, that I can do this within the framework of the Brown Act. If any of you have thoughts regarding that workshop day, morning time, please send them to me within the next week as the committee gets together to try to figure out what we want to do. And I would say, in terms of what you might talk to me about, is first of all, what you would hope to accomplish with such a day, and perhaps the guidelines, maybe any suggestions on how it might look. All right? And it would be sent directly to me, and I will not reply all, so I believe we're in the nature of the spirit of the Brown Act in that. Okay, let's go quickly down from starting. Let's start at the right-hand side today with Hillary.
I do not have anything to report.
All right.
Thank you. I will give the report. My name is Joanne Sanders, and I will give the report for the Sonoma Valley Library. Last weekend, we hosted a couple of musicians at 2 o'clock on Saturday afternoon. It was well attended, and it also marked the conclusion of our spring book sale. And at our spring book sale, we raised a gross of $12,500. We had 360 boxes of books, and 270 were sold, which is about 75%. 90 boxes were donated to local schools. So we had an excellent result, and I have to say that we have a terrific system of sorting books and sort of putting the merchandising behind our process. So we have terrific volunteers who know what our community likes to buy, and they sort them on a regular basis and put them out accordingly, and that's why so many sell. On tonight's agenda, I just want to point out that tonight's agenda item includes an appointment for a youth lab member. It will be the first time that Sonoma Valley Library will have a youth lab member. I joined Claire, our children's librarian, and Lisa Musgrove, our branch manager, last month and conducted one-on-one interviews with 3 highly qualified candidates. And it was a difficult decision, but we made a democratic process out of it, and we have made a nomination, which is in your agenda packet tonight, and I hope you will support that. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Hi, this is Helena Whistler. Sebastopol did not have a meeting this month. They don't meet until, this coming Wednesday. But I did have the pleasure of attending the Guerneville Library Advisory Board meeting for Paul Heavenridge, who was unable to attend. And I used to go to their meetings all the time because I used to be their commissioner. So it was great to be able to go and see everybody. And there was some good discussion, and Mike Daw was there for the library. And I think they always enjoy having, they certainly enjoy having the director, but they also enjoy having different managers come and represent the library too. The branch manager talked about, and I see it's in the management report, but talked about the preparations for the Stumptown Day parade, where they were dressing up as library books and dancing in the parade, promoting the Guerneville branch. The Friends reported that they had a successful book sale. The Library Advisory Board has, I believe, they finalized the update that they had done to the handbook, the lab handbook, and they were anticipating looking at the bylaws at their next couple months.
Did you know the staff won first place in Stumptown?
I didn't. That's great. Yeah, the costumes looked absolutely fantastic, and the posters that had been done by the graphic artist for the library, whose name I apologize escapes me right this minute, really looked fabulous. So I'm not surprised that they won.
There were two of us at the meeting at the Rincon Valley Library, and anything I missed, David, of course, can add in. I'm very impressed with two things. First of all, the Pickled Beets will be at the Central Library on June 13th, and we have everything from the symphony to bluegrass, Sonoma Mountain Trio, not just in the Central Library, but all over the library system. Also, the summer reading program for adults and for children, which also brings us to the nice tote bags that we got that I will now... Oh, you'll talk about that, sorry. Can I talk about these? These are bookmarks for both adults and children to encourage them to read during the summer, as well as my lightning bolt to remind me to do that. I'm very impressed with the things going on for the Teen Lounge. The Navajo Weavers are coming. It's really one more great resource in our community that we need to get a PR person for, to say all of these things that are going on that are different and something could appeal to someone. So it was a very interesting meeting for 1 hour. And for the Santa Rosa lab, we usually have just one teen representative, and now we have 2 qualified candidates. And the thinking of maybe expanding to 2, because we don't want to squash the enthusiasm of youth, since they're both going to different schools, different parts of Santa Rosa. But it was very interesting. And then our present youth person is leaving to go to UCLA. Thank you. Bye-bye.
My name is Tim May, and I would just like to take this opportunity to publicly thank Kate Keaton, who worked at our library for 14 years, has now moved on to be the branch manager of Northwest. Her years of service are greatly appreciated. She added so much. She stepped in several times as temporary branch manager, wonderful involvement of teens. We shall miss her, but we understand people need to move on.
Yeah, hi, I'm Paul Grill from Healdsburg. Saturday evening, we're having a party at the library for Bo Simons, who's going to retire after a long and productive career within the library. He was the wine manager for a long time, and then now he's been the manager, and he's held very warmly by everybody there. They like him a lot. On another note, the Friends of the Healdsburg Library are in the process of trying to pull their funds out of the Sonoma, I'm not even sure what, it's a foundation where they've got like 120 grand in it they don't really have access to anymore. We're going to be using a couple of letters. The Healdsburg Museum pulled $1 million out recently, and the Serapamist, they've just pulled out about another 200,000, and we're going to try and pull out about 120 and manage it ourselves. And then thirdly, we also have a new youth member on our lab, and our lab is filled out nicely. I think we've got a nice wide range of people, even our next commissioner. So that's it.
And I'm Reese Foxton, and I've been gone for most of the month, so I don't have anything to report. Yes, it is.
David Ebright, Commissioner from City of Santa Rosa. Just a couple of things to add on to Commissioner Garcia's comments about the Library Advisory Board meeting that took place on May 20th. I'd like to say thank you very much to Kim Papanak for her role as interim branch manager in the Northwest branch. Done a great job. And so thank you very much to her for, I don't see her here tonight, but for her hard work. That's a fabulous branch and a very busy library branch. She reported that they had 6,500 visitors in April. So I encourage you all to visit that branch as well. And kudos to the drill cart team in the Rose Parade. I understand they did not win any awards this year, but the photos, I think, are still available on the Press Democrat page if you'd like, website, if you'd like to see photos of that group in action. It was a very lively discussion, especially around not only staff, but had expressed a desire for more community outreach, and also members of the Library Advisory Board had a lively input and discussion about community outreach and what their role could be in that, and a member of the lab came to the Public Relations Committee this evening as a member of the public, so that was much appreciated. And thank you to Mike Doff for coming and telling us about the library. Much appreciated. And I think that concludes my report. Thank you.
Not much to report from Windsor. Legos is this coming Saturday. There was hula dancers this past Saturday. The town of Windsor had its first short film festival Friday and Saturday night, which is a block from the library. So that's about it.
Rohnert Park, Barbara McKenzie from Rohnert Park. I wanted to report that I'm no longer going to report about the Friends of the Library because I would like in August for us to figure out how we can get the Friends to come down and report about themselves or some other way to do it. There's no more important group to me, no more solid group of supporters than the Friends, but it's probably not appropriate for me to report about the Friends activities. The last lab meeting I went to, we had some enthusiasm to do an outreach program at the Rohnert Park Farmers Market. And so we did, we put together a small committee. There were 4 of us. We did a crash purchasing frenzy and got a bunch of neat little things to give away. And if you'll indulge me in a moment of show and tell. This is the coup de grace here. So we have the last 2 Sundays been at the Rohnert Park Farmers Market on Sunday. This compares to the National Night Out that we've done. The Friends have done a couple of National Night Outs in August, and we've been asked to do it again. But anyway, when we do that, we have a nice table. We have doodads and candy and stuff, but it's kind of hard to get people to come over. If you have this really works. So we have had a tremendous outpouring. I mean, almost everybody who has been in the farmers market has stopped and the little tiny kids and the adults, and we have a big section of books. That's the hardest section to get because they're the most expensive. So that's only one wedge of the pie of get a book. But we bought new books from infant on up to adult, and so that's the big prize winner. And we have a red tablecloth, and we have our red, white, and blue hats, and we have these cool Dr. Seuss postcards and other cards, and they say Roanoke Park Cotati Library comp gift of, and we have pencils, and we have word search, and we have all kinds of cool things like that. And it's just been an incredible opportunity to talk about the programs that we're always talking about. Nancy Claiborne made us a nice box of materials. We have all the stuff on Read to a Dog and the summer reading program. I had lots and lots of interest in the summer reading program, and I think we got 8 new people applying for library cards just in 2 weeks. So anyway, I had to bring this down because it's so cool, and I knew you'd all want to see it. That's it.
I've sat through many reports of the commissioners. Never one like that. Thank you, Barbara.
So I'm Paul Heavenridge, representing the Sonoma County Board of Supervisors and the Guerneville Library, and thank you, Elena, for filling in. I really appreciate it. And Elena had the report, so thank you.
All right, moving along to the Commissioner Committee reports. We'll begin with the Director's Evaluation Committee.
The Directors Evaluation Committee met this afternoon and completed the Director's Evaluation.
Thank you. Any questions? Moving along to the Finance Committee, and I believe we have a document related to the Finance Committee. All right.
Okay. I think I'll do my report before we get to that document, if that's all right with you, Mr. Chair. The Finance Committee met on May 18th, on Monday, in the boardroom of the Central. Commissioners Whistler, Fox, and Grill and McKenzie were present. Director Lear was present. CFO Neiman was absent. One member of the public appeared before us to comment on the gift policy. We briefly reviewed the monthly financial report, and our committee also looks at items that cost $25,000 or more, and we do note that the expense of $34,000 to Hansel Auto Group for a new truck happened last month. At the request of this commission at our May meeting, the Finance Committee took another look at the draft compensation philosophy policy. We made some changes, and we were ready to bring the revised draft back to you tonight. But we were advised last week that Director Lear, from the director, that he had the opportunity to discuss the revised draft with some of the members of the Labor Management Committee, and they offered some very good feedback. And with our approval, he pulled the item from the agenda tonight, and we will take another look at it at our June meeting and bring it back to you next month. We spent a significant amount of time discussing the gift policy. The member of the public who was there made a lot of good suggestions, and in particular, she wanted to make sure that the wishes of the donor would be honored to the extent possible. We understand that Rebecca Forth did quite a bit of research on past gift policies of this library as well as policies of other libraries, and so she gave us had a nice draft that we were able to work from. Highlights include the requirement that for gifts over $5,000, there will be a gift agreement signed by the director. A section spells out donor responsibility, and then we added a section on library responsibility, again, to reflect this sense that we want to honor the donor's wishes. We also added sections on how we invest as well as divest funds, and a section on making an annual report to the Commission on gifts and expenditures. We also had a wide-ranging discussion on the role and the responsibilities of the Finance Committee, and this is the document that we'll look at in just a sec. I drafted a preliminary document just out of thin air. It wasn't based on anything, but I tried to spell out in more simple, kind of basic ways what we thought we were supposed to be doing. And then we discussed what kind of approaches we want to look at for the implementation, if we do an implementation of the compensation study, so that staff could bring us numbers next time. Finally, we reviewed again the policy for expense reimbursement for the commission, which is on our agenda tonight. I noticed that the form that we would fill out is not included in the packet, but the general policy is. And our Finance Committee expects to maintain a regular meeting schedule of the third Monday of every month at 3 p.m. at Central in the boardroom. Members of the public are invited, and we do ask them that they come to the back door along the alleyway since the library is closed on Mondays. And now briefly, if we could look at the item in the agenda. I don't know if you want to,
Yeah, let's look at
do that part.
All right, so you're done with your report
I'm
except
done
for
with
this?
my report. If you want to.
All right, are there comments about the draft role and responsibilities of the Sonoma County Library Finance Committee? I would say I have a couple, but one of them is initially the role and responsibility of the Sonoma County Library Commission Finance Committee as a title.
Okay.
To include the commission in there in the title. Are there any other comments from members of the commission about this procedure? I had some wording issues, and it's around the first paragraph. The last sentence in the first paragraph. The Finance Committee works in collaboration with the director and the CFO to set strategic direction for the library system. And I would like to insert this wording. It may be awkward because I did it in the car before the meeting, but the Finance Committee develops recommendations to the Commission by working in collaboration with the director and CFO to set strategic direction for the library system. The sentence seems to indicate to me that the committee sets strategic direction, and it's more the committee works for the commission to do the setting. Am I clear on that? Yeah.
Is this on? No. It's my recollection when we were working on that sentence that it was the financial strategic direction. So I think one word was omitted from the conversation. I don't know if that affects what you're saying, Tim, but the word beginning.
Well, at the request of the commission chair or the commission, the Finance Committee will make recommendations to the commission. Then it says the Finance Committee works in collaboration with the director and the CFO to set strategic direction to the library system.
And I think what got omitted was to set the financial strategic direction.
Well, even in that case, I think that, this is just me, other people can speak in, but the role of the committee, I think, is to recommend strategic, either financial or non-financial. Are people clear about what I'm saying?
Yes, sir. And I wanted to add that I drafted this thing, and then Brett made this comment that we really need to look big picture and talk about, the strategic direction of things. And so then I raced home as fast as I could and typed this really fast and got it back to Rebecca because the packet was supposed to go out that night.
Right.
And so I kind of slopped it in there, and it really is kind of awkward the way it shouldn't be the last sentence anyway. It should be kind of up there in the first sentence. And I agree with what you're saying. We don't set the strategic direction, but we work on developing and make recommend, blah,
Okay,
blah, blah.
so
We need to,
are people just understanding conceptually what I'm saying? So will this, just as a quick question, this is a draft. You're hearing my input. Other people have their opportunity for input. But so are you understanding what I'm saying in terms of a next draft? Because I would imagine then the commission will approve this in some formal manner. So, okay?
right, we'll polish it up. Thank
All
you.
right. Any other comments from commissioners regarding that? I'm seeing heads shaking no. All right. Thank you for your work. We're not done with the committee reports yet, but anyway, I'm appreciative of all the time put in for all of these things. Public Relations Committee.
Right. All of the four commissioners, myself, Reese, Paul, and Randall were present. We had two members of the public present at the meeting. And our first action item was to discuss and approve our subcommittee purpose. And after lots of discussion about a variety of tactics, things we'd like to see done, we were also cognizant of the fact that the Commission tonight will be looking at the strategic plan. We'll also be looking at the official name, the work plan for Sonoma County Library Public Outreach. And we felt that we could not really come to some sort of a final decision about what our role and purpose of this subcommittee is without hearing and discussing especially those two items tonight. The one decision that we did make, or were able to make, is that 5 o'clock, so an hour and a half prior to regular commission meetings, was the time when we would meet regularly. So that'll meet monthly. And we were also aware of the fact that it is difficult to have a public meeting in a building that isn't really open very much. So we were thinking about, we'll check this out, but maybe moving it to the forum room where there is easier public access and we can control that access there. So that's a thought. Did I miss anything else, Commissioners, from our discussion?
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Revenue Enhancement Committee.
I've been, 3 months ago or so, the Revenue Enhancement Committee asked Brett, the director, to form an outreach group, which has become the Community Outreach Group, to explore various options that we had in front of us as far as raising the awareness of the community, funding, et cetera. I've been working closely with that group since that time, and we are going to be holding a meeting in the next 4 weeks to finalize the Enhancement Committee's role in this whole process. It's taken quite a while to figure out how all the various pieces fit together. The group hired a consultant, as you know, and we have a working plan to work with now. We've got the strategic plan, and it looks like more than likely the Enhancement Committee may be acting as an oversight for this kind of outreach, because it does involve the funding aspects of supporting this library. We've worked with community leaders, we've worked with library leadership, et cetera. So that's where it stands at this point in time. So hopefully by July we'll have a more definitive answer as to what our role is specifically.
It's so much fun to be developing things new.
The foundation.
All right. Then the one comment I want to say before I ask for final issues on this, one of the things that's come up in discussion is the role of staff on our committees. And the issue of, for example, it comes to mind for me, particularly around the Public Relations Committee. Finance Committee has staff, the Evaluation Committee has Brett, and Revenue Enhancement Committee, we don't have any direct staff. And at the risk of adding more things onto the plate, it feels important that we do be sure to coordinate with library management in the areas as we proceed. So that's one of the things that I would hope that the Public Relations Committee takes into account as they develop their procedures. Are there any comments from the Commission regarding the reports? Again, a huge thanks for all the time that's involved in these various committees. Are there any comments from the public regarding any of these reports? There being none, we move on to the approval of the minutes. I do know that there are some changes or corrections to the minutes that need to be made, so I would suggest that we work on those before we have the motion to approve the minutes.
Okay.
Do you want to start?
Yeah, 12.3, the last section. The commissioners directed staff to develop a schedule that includes being open on Mondays, allowing public service staff to have 2 consecutive days off every week, and without any additional expense. I don't remember that we included the 2 consecutive days off, I remember commissioners just saying, how do we see it being open on Monday?
Well, I do recall that that was something that at least one commissioner and staff had been concerned about. So I think with the plan that we were presented by Dina Bliss from SoCOSOL, it allowed for 2 consecutive days like every other week. So, but I think that was something that staff was going to work on to see what they could come up with.
So the thing is, though, I didn't hear all the commissioners say, yes, and 2 consecutive days off. Just bring back a plan that says Monday.
Well, that was, I don't know, I thought that it was something that
We can
somebody
double
was
check
very-
the tape, but I think that this is an issue that we've wrestled with for a long time. But I would think that what we would want, but this is, you can't change the minutes, but that 2 consecutive days off is an option, but we'd like to know of other options also.
Well, I can speak as the commissioner who refused to vote for it unless we had 2 consecutive days off. And so when we did the second kind of sense of things, I changed my vote only because we would look at alternatives that included 2 consecutive days off.
Would you be adverse to seeing other alternatives also?
No, but I'm not going to vote for them.
Okay. You've already pre-decided your vote.
Sorry.
But, all right. Okay, so is that clear to staff that if there are other options besides only 2 days in a row, to include those? Yes.
So I'm a little confused whether we are providing new direction or are we approving the minutes for what happened
We're approving
at that
the
meeting?
minutes. And so the question is there confusion on whether it says, we actually said that we definitely want to have the option with 2?
So it seems to me if there's question about what happened, then we could easily pull up the meeting and direct staff, either do it now or direct staff to come back. We don't want to wait.
Okay.
Or we can put this off till, in the meantime, between now and the end of the meeting, I bet you there's a staff person who could call up the meeting, listen to the tape, or watch the video, and you can go right to that item and they could have an answer for us as to what happened. I'm a little reluctant to vote on something when we have the record right in front of us. We might as well just...
Is there somebody...
Again, we're not providing new direction. We're trying to approve minutes of what actually happened.
Right, we're trying to... Right.
All right. So, I'm fine with that. Also under 12.4, upcoming commission items, goal setting and assessment meeting, the commissioners responded positively to this idea. Commissioners, and it notes Commissioner Smith, May, and Whistler volunteered. I volunteered. And I'd like to be noted that Commissioner Garcia volunteered as well.
Okay, and and I don't know that Commissioner Smith did. Did you? I don't think you did. I think it was only Commissioner Whistler and
But you're welcome.
Garcia that did it. So that's a correction. The other question I had is around item 11.2. I'm not sure. There's a part in that paragraph that really confused me. It says, to work the library support groups, Foundation Labs, friends, and others, community members. And then it says something about get from David E. Bright, and I don't know what that's all about. Pardon me?
That was around David E. Bright's
New.
change of language.
Okay, so
that was its
what
in there.
how about the 3 commas? Should they be taken out? Okay, and get the from David E. Bright out. Okay, all right. Any other corrections?
Yes. Commission reports, Finance Commission 7.2.2. It isn't quite correct. What it really should say is that the Finance Committee developed a work plan which includes the topics, the gift policy, the compensation policy, and the classification and compensation study. Because I didn't report on any of those, I reported that we had a work plan to look at those items.
So what's the wording you'd like to have it say?
I guess I can repeat. Commissioner McKenzie gave the report, including the committee's work plan, which includes the gift policy, the compensation policy, and the classification and compensation study.
Okay. All right, so we have several corrections. Any other corrections? All right. I think I'll hold on the vote until after I think Mike has gone out to look at the meeting. So we'll come back to that motion after we have the information of what really was said at the meeting. Okay? So let me put that there. Any specific correspondence or press coverage? There were the articles that were included in email about the Board of Supervisors and the funding of Mondays. Any other press coverage of significance? Generally speaking, what we've done in the past is that it used to be we had a little folder on the table with these in it and tried to pass them, but now Rebecca tries to send them to us ahead. You have something there?
There was an article in the Press Democrat about David Dodd being a total expert in the Grateful Dead lyrics. So include this in the file.
Yes, I was going to mention that too, and I thought it was a great article, David. Good job.
And we continue to be grateful for everything David does.
Yes, we do.
But not dead. All right. Any other press coverage issues? Moving along to the consent calendar with nothing on it. Action items, insurance renewal for the authorize the workers' compensation policy. All right. We would need to approve this, and this has happened before, and because of the timing, we need to approve it. Go ahead, Patrick. You want to?
Not yet.
Not yet? You're ready. All right. I know that several commissioners have mentioned that there are some issues with this this item. Shall we open the discussion? Do you want to start, Paul, or you had? No, this Paul.
This Paul.
Paul,
we're talking about workman's comp.
Right, we're there now.
Okay. Well, it's exorbitant. If you turn to page 6, and if you look at our code number 8810, under clerical office employees, we're paying 99 cents. And Patrick, you might have to help me on this. Is that per $100 or per $10? What is that per?
It would be $100 of payroll.
$100. Just for a reference point, I checked into our business, and for the same classification, we're paying 0.39. Thanks, Rebecca. So anyway, the Sonoma County Library is paying 99 cents per $100, and I was saying that I did some checking into my business and just looked at some comparable statistics. So anyway, so we're paying 0.39 under 8810, and then under building operations, that was close to, I guess, what our mechanics were. And we're paying $17 per 100. At our place, we're paying $5.19. I talked with my partner about some of the things that we had done to bring our mod rate back into line. At our worst, we were at 125%. One of the things that we did was we went and called our hiring procedures and went through and sent everybody through a, not strenuous, but a physical and some other things to qualify that they didn't have any existing situations, and then we worked with our carrier, which I see is the same. I don't know that we're going to use Berkshire Hathaway, Patrick, because that's who we use.
We use Berkshire Hathaway.
They come out and put on regular classes for us, and those two things in combination brought us down. Today, as we speak, we're at 0.75 on our mod rate, and as we sit here at the library, we're now at 280%. So,
Okay, thank you. Commissioner?
Thank you, Chair May. I'd like to spend a little bit of time with my fellow commissioners on this item and try to bring it to, and for the public's benefit, put this into a perspective that most people can understand. And when you start talking about mod rates and workers' comp carriers and things like that, sometimes people's eyes gloss over. And I think it's important to have a conversation that people can relate to. So if I may, and I appreciate your comments, Paul, but I would like to draw attention mostly to this experience modification rate of 281%. And my colleague Paul is correct. It's extremely high. I've met with staff. Staff has been very forthcoming with me and sitting down and understanding what's been going on with regard to injuries and the cost of providing medical insurance and care and coverage to our employees who have been injured on the job. But for the crux of my point here is that if you all turn to the estimate that we have in front of us for, I don't know what, page 6 is what it's recorded as, but it's the one that's estimating for the period of July of 2015 to July of 2016. It's estimating a modification experience mod rate of 281%, which is costing us, and Patrick, please jump in, feel free to jump in if I misspeak, which is costing us an extra $243,000 a year. The library, many businesses have, as Paul said, less than an experience mod of less than 100%. So it could mean we could be saving $300,000 a year on workers' comp costs if we were able to reduce our mod rate. And a mod rate is just like if you have your cars in your garage, and some people have a couple teenage boys, and the insurance company looks at the type of cars that you have and the chances of those cars being wrecked or stolen based on the model and the year and the value of the car and what zip code you live in and what types of drivers you have and what types of drivers you have and their driving record. And so that's how they give you your policy, right? And they tell you how much your insurance policy is going to cost for your cars. Well, it's the same thing for a business, and it's the same thing for the library. The insurance companies have decided that the risk of insuring us is so high because the odds are very high that we will have injuries that they have added a surcharge of 281% to our premium. It's a serious thing. It's something that we need to be hard focused on and give staff the tools to change the direction of the ship. And this will require not just bringing in somebody for a couple times a year to talk about safety. It could mean redefining job descriptions system-wide, because we have some injuries that are occurring that unless you change somebody's job description on a variety of job categories, it's not going to go away. There are some inherent inherent situation with the way the classification goes for our employees, but the bottom line is that we have to improve upon the safety record before other insurance carriers are going to come up and give us something more competitive. and before the bureau that rates us. It's an independent bureau. No matter where we go, we're going to carry that 281% driving record, if you will. It doesn't matter who gives us the quote. They're all, some of them, as you see in the report here, some of them don't want to insure us at all. They won't even give us a quote because it's too risky for them. And I think we owe it, we can all agree that we don't want to have injuries. We want a safe workplace. It shouldn't be that going to work at the library, the Sonoma County Library, has a higher injury modification rate than the oil refinery in the East Bay. And that's where we are right now because they are so focused on safety. They live and die by safety. We need to start doing that, at least to the tune of the $300,000 that it's costing us. And I hope that I hope that I have compelled you a little bit in my explanation that we give staff direct funds, budget amendment, whatever it takes to give staff the resources to solve this problem. It's staring us in the face. We have a $300,000 savings per year that we can achieve with something that will be very popular with our workers and will enhance morale and improve staff productivity time because staff has to manage this too. Thank you.
Thank you. Other commissioners?
I have a separate concern. It's less serious than the moderate, but I notice on the location schedules that one thing we cover is the Los Gulicos, where I understand after having a tour by Tony Hoskins that we have archival responsibilities. I wasn't sure about that, whether that's kind of a holdover from the county library system. I mean, whether we should be covering that.
What page are you on?
I'm on page 4, called Location Document. It's after the marketing survey. It's document 9.1.1, 6.1.15.
Oh, it's our locations. Which one?
Yeah.
Location number.
So down there, location 14, and that's not even my most important one. My most important one is that I notice that we cover a leased space that the River Friends are using and the space at the fairgrounds that the Friends of Petaluma are using. And my concern is, are there other locations that we don't know about, including Rohnert Park, which has we don't lease the space, but the Friends have a donated space at an off-site storage place, and that's where all this heavy-duty stuff, when the volunteers are going over with their trucks and, lifting and heavy and stuff. And I didn't know until, I think I asked this once, but I forgot, that the volunteers are included in our work comp policy. So this is kind of scary because I would say at least our location isn't listed here because probably Patrick didn't know about it because it's never been reported, and I don't know how many other Friends groups might have a similar kind of thing, and they've never reported it.
Patrick?
Well, with regards to the Friends themselves are not covered under our workers' comp policy. The direct volunteers of the library are, as well as, and so that's the only thing I can think of right now why those other locations have not been included.
So why would we be covering location 16 and 17 then? Because those are Friends that are using those spaces, not volunteers, if we're not considered volunteer.
I don't have an answer for you. I'd have to go back through the records and see how they ended up, in the first place.
So Friends are not considered library volunteers?
Correct.
Thank you.
Not for purposes of the workers' comp policy.
And I had one other question. For me, what's Marin County's mod rate for their libraries? Is our mod rate way out of line with other libraries' mod rates?
I think as we've responded to that question before, most libraries are part of a city or a county, which typically are self-insured, and mod rates aren't available for those agencies.
Are there agencies that aren't, like Sacramento, any of the other JPAs?
We can check. I honestly don't know at this point.
Okay. All right. Go ahead.
Well, the only thing I would add is something we've talked about before. I definitely have spoken to Ken and Patrick several times because I agree we need to do everything we can do to make our workspaces as safe as possible, but part of it still comes to our classification, and we're classified, a lot of our staff are classified as clerical office workers. So when you have somebody that's sitting in an office somewhere in downtown Santa Rosa, they're classified at the same, level as someone who's maybe downstairs at our central library lifting hundreds of pounds up and down over the course of a day, and injuries do occur with that. Anywhere I've worked over the years, libraries, there's so much repetitive motion that you try to do all you can to eliminate those types of injuries. But, if we were classified in the same code as supermarket workers, our base rate would be a little higher, but then our mod rate wouldn't be so off the charts, because staff here would probably be getting injured at about the same rate as a supermarket stocker. Not stalker. I was
Not stalker, but
CKE.
stalker. Okay.
So there is it is problematic the way that we're classified, and I think that's
why the other libraries are interesting to me.
Right.
But essentially, if I may yes, Patrick?
Well, I was just going to make mention, Commissioner Sanders has attended one of the claim reviews that we went to and asked a number of questions of our broker and what have you. And then as we discuss that further, it is obvious, regardless of all these issues of our the classification that's used and what have you, the focus does need to be on just reducing our number of claims. And we have taken that to heart. A recent safety committee meeting, we've made it very clear that has to be our focus for this year. Now, one of the questions I had asked our brokers when we received this proposal, there were a number of providers that had comments about decline because of clerical classification. And I asked, well, why would that be? Because that seems a relatively tame environment. But given our operation, it's because of our size and the number of clerical workers, but specifically the potential for repetitive motion type injuries. And that's why you see a handful of carriers declining to provide a quote at this time. For the same reason, some will decline us because we do cover volunteers.
Okay, so basically, I believe that the commission, go ahead.
Patrick, I appreciate that every year we talk about this, and every year it gets a little clearer. And I appreciate the explanation that you had of the XMOD. I think it was last meeting or the meeting before that, and how we got to where we are. But it would be great to know what will be done differently going forward to try to reduce, to really, I mean, it's one thing to tell people we really got to focus on this, but we really have to focus on this. And what steps will the library management do to reduce these kinds of injuries and help reduce our XMOD going forward?
And we will certainly take up that challenge, especially with our upcoming safety committee meeting, to start to develop some specifics as to how exactly we're going to go about doing that, so that we can report back what those steps will be specifically.
And I think that these are valid questions about why are we covering location 16 and 17 if the Friends aren't considered volunteers to the extent that they should be covered under workers' comp, which I'm a little surprised at, actually. But it is a little confusing. We have these two spots. I can understand certainly the annex because, I mean, not the annex, but the Los Guilicos, because staff, I believe staff goes out there and we store books there, and they're shifted and delivered from there a lot of times. So So that would be good if you could just let us know how that happened. Are there other people, staff members who help store the books out at Guerneville and Petaluma? Are these perhaps not just volunteers that are? And I think that's an excellent question that Commissioner Sander had too about the comparison to other libraries, because surely they must have the same classification of clerical that we do. Is it just that their ex-mod somehow is lower because they don't have as many injuries? And if so, what are they doing?
Okay, so if I may draw this a bit to a close, I think first of all we actually need to approve this expenditure tonight, and then. But I think the mission. I think I don't need to restate what we've already said. We want our workers safe, and we want to know some details. All right.
I have one question in closing, though. So,
okay.
Patrick, is there a specific repetitive motion that accounts for a high percentage? And the reason I ask that is that you found that here?
Brett's showing you.
Carpal tunnel. Yeah, I know that when we involved, I think it's called risk management.
Why don't you talk to him privately about that later?
Could I ask one more quick question? So this covers 12 months, and one of our problems every year is we don't have the figures for the time the commission has to approve the expenditure. Is it possible to get a policy for 13 months so that we can get the figures for the next year before we have to approve the expenditure?
We have put that question to our broker. They're researching it for us right now. Potentially by changing that period, it can increase our ex-mod and our expense. Mm-hmm. So before actually requesting that change, we want to make sure we know what we're getting into and not create any unnecessary expense.
All right, and generally my impression is that we are going to ask for a motion, although it's not stated on this page. So the motion is to approve the purchase of the commission. Let's see. The motion is to approve the expenditure of 200. What is it? 200 and
no more than $280,000.
It's not.
It's on page 12.
It's on page 12. Oh, it's over here. Okay. So there's a motion to approve. Where is it?
Not to exceed 280,000.
Okay, so there is a motion. Does someone want to make that motion?
So moved.
So moved. Second?
Second.
All those in favor of that motion?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
Opposed?
I'll go opposed too, but it's not. It's just to make a statement, I suppose. What I'd like to say is that I'd like to see a future agenda item come back to us for a proposal for a risk manager, a newly created position. That's what we need, somebody to come in and help us solve this problem, and it's something that warrants this body looking at. What would we get?
That was where I was going with that the insurance company will provide you with a risk manager that's a pro, and they'll, if you need it, they'll put up 8, 9, 10, 11 meetings a year, and they'll define each thing, and it's just got to be really focused on. I mean, I don't know how low you can take it. But.
So we vote on this now, but we have to have another agenda that talks about the steps, whatever they are, whether it's risk management, whether it's trainings, whether it's all that stuff. And the risk manager doesn't have to be forever, does it? No. Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry. The risk manager doesn't have to be forever. It could be a 1-year appointment. It could be an 18-month appointment. But I feel that we have to, so that we're covered, from June on, that we have to. But we have some work to do afterwards, and not to drop the ball or the ideas that have come out. And I support a risk management person for a period of time. whether it's supplied by the insurance company or is hired independently. But I see a lot of short-term positions to help us get back on our feet. But this is a big money one here. So that's what I'm hearing out of frustration. Yeah. So I would vote yes, only because we have to do it. But from now on, another agenda item, what are the steps we're going to take?
All right.
May I just add one last comment? Not to make excuses or anything, but I am happy to report that year to date for this policy year, we currently have 5 reported claims. Last year, we finished it with 12 claims. So.
Good job.
Thank you. All right. Moving along to item 10.1, and it's the director's report. Brett, do you want to speak to it first before we discuss the Dan Mullen report?
Sure.
Okay.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Brett Lear, Library Director. I'll just cover a few things before we talk about Dan's report. A lot of what I've been working on this month and the past few months continues to be the strategic plan. So I'll cover a little bit more on that since that's an agenda item unto itself. I've also been working with Ken quite a bit in the Finance Committee to sort through the compensation recommendations out of the cost study. So Ken and I are putting forth 3 or 4 scenarios that would allow us to bring staff up to market salaries, and then that'll come to the commission probably in August. Yeah. Keo, I even checked the minutes, Mike did, and at 3 hours and 12 minutes of your last meeting, you gave instruction to staff to plan for a no-cost way to open Mondays that would also give staff 2 days off in a row.
So that's the minutes reflect what we decided. Yeah.
Yeah. So that right now, I delegated that to Keo, and then Keo delegated that to our branch managers. So they're working on developing some schedules that meet that criteria, and we'll certainly also come back and say that wasn't possible, and then I think it'll bring into play, what you were saying about maybe some alternatives as well. And that really leads me up to Dan's work plan that we got from our contractor, Dan Mullen, that we've been working with now for a little over a month. I have to say it's been terrific to have him available. He's really eased my mind that we can start to get on paper some of the things that we need to be doing around community outreach. I was really struggling really to give myself the time to focus on that. So he's been very helpful. We meet once a week. He comes to the community outreach meetings that I hold weekly, that director's task force around revenue enhancement and other things. And then he and I talk almost daily via phone and telephone. I think the report does a really great job of kind of establishing a baseline of what a lot of our services are now and what the community thinks of those services. I think it also does a nice job of showing us which services are wonderful and we should probably be doing a better job of promoting. I think he also does a nice job of really pointing out services that maybe we offer in a modest way, but there's a potential for much more community demand around certain services. He points out some things that we do around literacy, that there's certainly more folks out in the community that, that want to learn English or want to learn how to read. So we have some existing services that if we can find a way to increase the staffing capacity, we can do some great things there too. And then really, I think that for me, the heart of the report is really laying out a work plan for what next steps we have to accomplish over the next year to really start moving ahead around community outreach. We've already started doing some of the things out of the recommendation. This week, library staff put forth a request for proposals to go out and get bids for that marketing position that we wrote into the budget for 1 year. So that went out today. So really, that's in a nutshell that report. I know that you all might want to discuss it and ask questions, and Dan's here on hand if you have any questions that I can't answer.
Okay, questions? I see a nod down there. Barbara?
Well, kind of jumping to almost the end of it, on page 8 of 9, we get into what I think is July of 16, where the commission decides if and how to pursue new funding sources. And I'm probably off base, but I don't think that we would be waiting until July of 16 to decide whether to do something, a tax measure for November of 16, and be in the same position we were in last time.
Do you want to speak to that, Dan?
So, as a matter of fact, you would. There are certain legal requirements that need to be met, and I would defer to county council, which I think is your council. 90 days out, 30 days out, 60 days out, that sort of thing. So it may be a formality at which point you're looking at this question in July of next year. But typically that is when it is done. It does not prevent any sort of citizens or private organization from organizing before that. But for this particular public organization, you could be looking at June, you could be looking at July, but a lot of organizations look at July. And some organizations even go as late as the beginning of August. I would not recommend that, but it does happen. And it's not to put anybody behind the 8 ball. It's just to allow yourself as much time as possible and to build as large a consensus as possible from the community if you decide to go in that direction.
So I don't get then, so we're doing all of these things and summoning up all this community support and doing all this kind of stuff, but would we really not know if we were going to do this until July? I mean, to actually put something on the ballot? I thought the take was what we did wrong with Measure M was that we did it at the last minute. We tried to do it in 3 months. And, you know, I know the timelines for filing and, you know, those kinds of things, creating your committee and stuff. But I just thought that, you know, we were in this get out the door, get it done, start soon and whatever. I think I'm not understanding the distinction between what you're saying and filing and so forth.
Sure. So this work plan did not exist in 2013 and 2014. So I think the significant difference between what happened in 2014 and what could happen in 2016 is the significant outreach that you would be doing before you decide to put this on the ballot.
So what I'm understanding, Barbara, is basically it's a formalized process in July. That's when we actually file the papers to get on the ballot.
Correct. It's a legal process.
But we will have done all the groundwork that we didn't have time into 2014 to do before then. That's what all the rest of the work plan is. Reese?
Well, if you look at it, a lot of advertising and awareness raising has already been done. Hopefully, there will be some sort, if we are working this way towards something like this, there will be a committee exploring that possibility and getting set so that the money is in place, so that the signs are there, so that we're not sitting there at the end of September, oh, there are no signs, oh, there's no money, oh, there's nothing.
And we'll have the ballot measure language done, the ballot measure, the proposal of what we want to do with the money. All of that will be done. It was sort of a surprise that we were going to do the election the last time, and we didn't. All that had to happen. So this is just, and the other piece of it is, if I understand the legal aspects, up until we have a formal ballot measure, then we have the access to use the entire library staff, et cetera, to work on it. But once it's a ballot measure, the laws come in on that. Am I right there?
Yes.
Okay.
Not only that, but there's significant community outreach that really should be done in terms of what the money is used for. In earlier pages in the document, we're looking at what are all the priorities and how does a community want to weigh in on what these different priorities are. You have a lot of different puzzle pieces coming together over the next 12 months, and this is just the community outreach portion. You know, as you tackle these different things around workers' comp and other things that are not even really touched in here except highlighted as a possible issue within the community, you're going to need to know how to answer those questions. In the public relations group earlier today, there was a desire expressed for a fact sheet, frequently asked questions, so that everybody was on the same page in terms of what the most important things are. Those things need to be developed. The newsletter outreach has to be developed. These things take time, and they're not necessarily part of a political campaign. This is public outreach, and you're right to look at it in this context.
Yeah, I mean, I think what Dan's helped me really understand is, you know, this is the work plan that he can help us with that will involve staff efforts and your efforts as commissioners. Now there's a citizens campaign committee may form at some time that forms as its group, and it would have a work plan, but we wouldn't be that group. But this gives us a path of things to work on between now and next July. But it's really our work plan, and there may be other groups out there that would have their own.
My question was, Brett used the pronoun we. This is what we need to work on for the next. So my question is, who is we? And who shoulders the responsibility for doing this? And what's that going to entail in terms of time, et cetera?
I would see this now going into an actual spreadsheet where we create a work plan, and I would think some activities, you know, we may need to rely heavily on the commission to complete some, and others might be entirely done by staff. But I think it'll be a mix.
Okay. Other questions?
So the action being requested by staff tonight is just to receive this report, no decision?
Yeah, no, there's no action on this tonight, just to ask questions.
And so where is it going from here?
That's a good question.
I have other questions too.
Go ahead. Will we need to actually formally adopt this?
I mean, it would certainly be helpful, but you know, we are bringing online a marketing person to help us with this. It's in the budget, so this really just helps us see what we should have that person and others working on. So we've already committed to bringing someone on to help with these activities. And again, Dan's really sketched out then what we would want this person to focus on and what help that person will need from staff and the commission.
So that leads to a couple of other questions. In this document contemplates conducting a RFP process and hiring a consultant for public outreach. Is that separate from the marketing person?
It's the same.
Oh, it's the same. Okay. And the hiring of a pollster and conducting updated survey of residents, is that budgeted?
Yeah. Yes.
So I have an opinion about that. I guess now is not the time to share that. But my last question was, well, two things. One is, what is the overall cost of implementing all of this?
I mean, I could take an estimate. You know, one of the costs is the money that we've set aside for the temporary position. We've also set aside, what was it, $40,000 for advertising. 75,000. So we through this budget knew that if we were to bring this person on, we'd want them to have a budget to work with. So we'd have the 75,000 for that, and then the rest I think will largely be staff time on a lot of this. So some of it was scoped out through the budget that went to the commission.
Okay, so no necessarily nothing new as a result of executing this plan.
I certainly haven't put it into a project planning tool and gotten it scoped out to the staff time costs and the actual costs. No.
So I think this was a well done document. I think you did a nice job laying it out for us and giving whoever it is the roadmap, and then the commission a chance to know what that is. There are little items within this that I hope will come back to the commission as they come up, especially going down the path of the sales tax measure. Again, if we have a problem on the sales tax ceiling that's at the state legislative level, it just seems like we would do a lot of things in here need to be done anyway, but there's some things that would be foolish to do if we don't solve that bigger problem. Or if not we solve it, but if it doesn't get changed.
Sorry. Well, the group that meets Monday, we've had the sales tax cap lift as an agenda item for the last few weeks, and we've been tracking, what's going on with the legislature and that. There was a bill that was trying to raise the cap for the whole state. But you're right, particularly with Measure A, that would affect things. So I think that's one thing that the pollster can help us with is, again, see, this year is the public more agreeable to parcel versus sales tax, and also just, again, hearing from our public about what their wants and needs are for library services. But it's certainly an issue that we wouldn't be able to collect the money necessarily if the cap is not lifted.
One of the goals of this work plan is to increase the integration of the library system with the entire community, regardless of what gets decided next year. So it's not sunk money. You would get value out of this.
My other question is, we've gone around the edges of it, but I think it's important that the commission be involved and used. And so the way that will happen is if we're given specific direction about how to be involved and used. So as it goes forward, I think it would be useful to keep that on the table. The other issue that comes up in terms of cost that I think would happen in terms of the 16-17 budget, and that is that if we put an initiative on the ballot, there's going to be a cost to that, and that's going to need to be taken into account for the budget for that year, and that's not an insignificant cost. So just keeping that on the horizon is important, I think. Any other comments about this? Go ahead, David.
I would echo your comments and request, I think, for how can commissioners help implement this plan. Whether we need to speak with legislators, whether we need to speak with the people in our community, schools. I mean, there are lots of pieces in here, outreach pieces. So how you can, or how we can enlist ourselves in this effort, I think will help lead to success here, and potentially also keep costs lower than they might otherwise be if we think that we're only relying on others to do this work.
All right. Barbara?
The only thing I would add, I must be the only one who's hazy about this, but at the last commission meeting, we had a recommendation from one of our committees, the Revenue Enhancement, that we were going to go ahead with the sales tax. And then we pulled that back and went with David's, let's build community support first. But we're kind of out there in the public as saying, we're going to have to do something. And so the whole time we're going through all of this kind of stuff, we have to maintain the position to the public that we don't know whether we're going for another tax measure. We don't know because we weren't going to vote on it till July.
We're not going to vote to formally do it till July.
Right.
Go ahead.
So what kind of phraseology do we use?
I think you just nailed it, actually. We don't exactly know what we're going to do. We know that there are ongoing issues, and we know that we need to find new sources of funding, and we're going out to the community to talk to them about it and to gain their feedback. I think on the first page, that this should be a feedback loop. So you're not just setting policy, but you're also gaining a deeper understanding of what the community wants. It's iterative. It comes through iterations, and something should emerge within the months and within all of the interactions that occur to help you gain a greater understanding of what the public really wants to do.
David, did you have something? Or Reese, did you?
Well, it seems to me that and one of the things I've been thinking about is part of the Revenue Enhancement Committee's job is to explore other opportunities or possibilities and think outside the box so that we know what some of those are in place, both the traditional and non-traditional, so that when we get down here, we have some options.
I would agree with that. And I would also add to that, there can be a lot of public assumptions about how much money exists within the corporate world or within the grant world. And you have to fact check all those things. If you're looking for, I'm not exactly sure how much funding you're looking for. Okay, so maybe you can get $500,000 or $1 million in grant money over the next few years, but maybe you don't, and it's unlikely that that's going to be enough to even come close to solving your problems. So again, there's a feedback loop where you have to fact check all of these things that come back from the public to get a realistic and practical understanding of what can and cannot be done.
Go ahead.
I'd just like to add a comment that this to me is about relationships and not transactions. Transactions happen as the result of relationships, and come next July, we may be saying this is a transaction we want to enact with our community. But if we don't have relationships with a variety of people in our community, the opportunity for success of that transaction is very slim. So I think one of the things this work plan does is it helps us ensure that, as you mentioned, a feedback loop, it reaches out to lots of areas in our community. It helps us build relationships so that when we do have a transaction necessary, we can get closer to making that happen.
Yeah, that's a very astute observation.
All right. It's almost quotable. I'm going to play the tape back and get that. Yeah, over and over. That was wonderful. All right. Are there other comments on this? Thank you. And we look forward to working together to make this happen. Okay, moving on to the monthly activities. Let's see. The monthly activities, I think this may be getting close to where we find out about the blue bags. Is this the first? Yes.
Oh no! Sonoma County is in a crisis. I've just learned that approaching us is the dread summer slide, where children will actually lose reading skills over the summer months. What can we do? Oh, I know. This is a job for super librarian. Good evening. I am Super Librarian. I am part of Super Team Awesome, a group of library superheroes across the county who are combating the dread summer slide. How do we do that, you ask?
How do we do that?
We do that by sharing positive attitudes about reading and books. Bam! We do that by encouraging regular use of the library. Pow! And we do that by helping kids maintain their reading skills over the summer months. Slap! Take that, summer slide. All right, it's really hard to see through the thing. I am here this evening to share information about the Sonoma County Library's summer reading programs this summer. There was a lot of summers in that sentence. The theme of this Children's Summer Reading Club this year is Every Hero Has a Story, which is emblazoned across your hero bag. There are 2 packets of materials in there. One of them is children's materials and one of them is teen. There aren't any printed materials for the adult program as yet that I had access to. So that's what I've got for you today. We will be celebrating heroes of all types, from the everyday, like volunteers who make their library system better, to the super, like me. Children from preschool through grade 6 who sign up will get a reading log on which they will record their reading. Each week they can participate by reading, coming to the library to attend events, and check in their progress, and they will earn incentive prizes like a free book bag and a free book. We have great performers coming in, for example, Mad Science, Ken Adams Adventure Theater, Jungle James Animal Adventures, Zoom Zoom Tunes, to name a few. On this blue large document is the schedule of children's events for the summer. And there's a list right there of all the performers who are coming, and then it's scheduled out by branch. Lots of great information. Teens will participate in the Teen Read program, which is a game card-based activity. That's your second packet in there. More greens and yellows. They will gain points by reading books and completing library activities. Each time they level up, they can earn a prize, and they can earn raffle tickets by writing book reviews or attending events and writing reviews of the events they attend. And with that raffle, they have a chance to win a Kindle Fire. Dun, dun, dun. For the very first time this year, we are also offering a system-wide adult summer reading program, which tracks reading progress on a book bingo card, which is intended to motivate and challenge adult readers to read outside their comfort zones. For each bingo completed, which I believe is 3 books read, they will earn raffle tickets and a chance to win gift certificates to local businesses. Before I close, I would like to give a quick shout out to the Sonoma County Public Library Foundation, who funded the entire all-ages summer reading program this year. They are our heroes. Thank you. One last thing. California public libraries have been challenged by the California Library Association to achieve 1 million summer reading signups across the state in 2015. Sonoma County, we are ready to meet your challenge. Yes, we are ready. So,
are there any questions or comments? Yes.
Do we know what our prorated share of that 1 million is?
In 2014, we had about 6,000 children and teens sign up. I don't know what, in 2014, we had one branch that did a summer reading program. That was Rincon Valley. I don't know what their numbers were.
The 1 million new cards, right? Didn't you say
No,
that?
not 1 million new cards. It's 1 million people signing up for summer reading programs.
I see.
So last year we had about 6,000. I think we're aiming for 9,000. We'll see. We've done a lot of outreach to the schools leading up to from the library card drive in the winter, and then visiting the schools a lot leading up to the start of the program. And so we're hoping to expand our numbers quite a bit this year.
And so do the grade cutoffs mean the grade that the child just completed, or the grade they're going into?
Entering. So the children's program is for entering 6th grade.
Okay.
The teen program is entering 7th grade. If they're 6th, 7th grade, we would usually tell them, pick one. If they're kind of borderline, we would allow them to choose one or the other to sign up for.
Barbara?
Have you been able to do your great show and tell, which I love, thank you very much, in front of like school assemblies? I mean, talk directly to the kids, or are you trying to go through the teachers?
I have not, but the librarians around, the super librarians around the county are going out to school assemblies and classrooms and doing presentations much sillier than me. Hard to believe.
It's been recorded.
Laura Wright from Rankin Valley. Very silly.
I have a question.
Yes.
Who do we thank for this besides you? Besides the foundation, in terms of the planning and the...
there is a committee.
A committee?
There are two committees. There's there's three committees. There's a children's committee, a teen committee, and an adult summer reading committee, and it's a lot of shared responsibility.
Thank them.
I will.
And the foundation.
I will. And then this bag here is for Brent.
Is this bag the book bag?
This is the book bag
that the kids
would achieve that on their 5th week of presentation.
Thank you.
Oh, even that.
For the new commissioners, this is a highlight every year. Kathy Dewey's doing something. All right, was there any questions about the rest of the management report, aside from the fact that wonderful things are happening, and I won't necessarily enumerate all of them? Other questions about the report? The Public and Youth Services section, the collection, materials, information technology, the many pages.
Agenda item 10.2, correct?
Correct. 10.2.1.
I have one question. The first paragraph of the director's activities talks about options for how the library might bring staff up to market average salaries over the next 1 to 2 years. And I just would like to know, not necessarily today, but if we could have a number for turnover and how we compare to other similarly situated systems. I'm just curious to know whether we're losing people at an unusual rate. We have any recruiting and retention challenges, because that would help me understand the logic behind the compensation policy and the decisions that we make in that regard. Is that clear? Is that okay with everybody?
Other questions about the report?
The comment that the compensation is based on the study that was presented to us a couple of months ago. Is that right?
That's what gave us
an
idea of how we measure up against.
And so I just need to make the comment that you are using 4 counties that the county of Sonoma does not use. And when they do compensation, and again, that we have no information on what the librarians who live here, who are working at the JC, Sonoma State, or even the legal library at the county. And I think we're missing some information. And I just needed to say that.
Okay. And I'd like to just put some stuff in context, in that this study was devised by the former director and the former commission. And we basically have essentially, I think, we can keep in mind that there are some questions about the comparison units, but we either do a whole new study, and I believe, how much did this one cost? Around $50,000? Or we can make the best of decisions we can based on what we have. And the other piece of that is that perhaps the compensation is not as significant a question as the reclassifications, which are a whole other part of the study. But I think we need to proceed with what we have, unless we, as a commission, decide or give direction for an entirely new study and an expenditure on that. Given the fact that, I'll stop. Given the fact that we have what we have, and we know that there's some question about the comparative study, but we have to operate it with what we have, is essentially where I am on that. Yes.
So I just want to state where I am on this, and that would be based on decision-making based on recruiting and retention numbers. Are we having problem recruiting, attracting qualified applicants for the positions that we're recruiting for, that you tell us about in your report? And are we having a problem hanging on to our employees?
Thank you. Other comments? All right. I've noticed that there are a couple of areas where we are having some trouble recruiting that come up here. The Budget and Finance Coordinator and the vacancies in the IT department. And if I'm not, we also, I'm going to say the name wrong because I do this, but the new librarian for for digital librarian, are we still looking for that person also? And what are the reasons for those difficulties?
Ken can speak to the business office position. We really have 3 positions now that we're recruiting for in IT. One is the new IT manager. So with that, we're finalizing the job description, and we'll get that posted knowing we can bring them on in July. Then we've had an open recruitment for what we're calling the e-resources and discovery librarian. That's been open now for a couple months. That has been surprisingly difficult to fill based on the application we've gotten to date. We had about 4 people that we felt, met minimum qualifications. So we did some initial phone interviews last week, and we got 1 or 2 promising folks out of that, but we will continue to leave it open right now. And then the third position, we have someone in IT that's our system administrator, and he's retiring. So that's the one that's got me really concerned, because we need someone day to day on hand in case the network goes down. So that's a position that we may look at finding a contractor locally that we can call upon in case something bad happens while we're filling that position. I hope to have it filled by the time the person leaves or close, but if not, we do want to have someone on standby that can help us if needed.
Okay.
Is that David Lytle?
Yes.
Yeah, I just want to call out that he had 35 years of service. It's a big void, big shoes to fill, not to mention his skill set.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And we've also been asking him to really kind of codify as much as he can for us now before he leaves us, so that we try to save as much of that knowledge as we can. But that's the one that's got me. That's the one I think about the most.
Is the annual conference going to help with recruitment for any of these?
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, you can hire a recruitment booth at ALA. They do have a placement center. That's a great idea. Thank you.
Other comments? Any public comment about the manager's report to date, to time? Yes.
Can I just make a comment about the class and comp study that we were just talking about? That was initiated by the former director as part of the budget for that fiscal year, but it actually, I just wanted to correct the record that it was not begun until after that person had left. And it was approved by the former commission, but that this whole process was begun last July. And so it is a recent development. And I do want to say that I think the agency that we selected is very good. And they've done many public libraries as well as other public agencies. So I don't think it's completely fair to say we're stuck with what we've got. I think we ended up with a really excellent result.
Excuse my verb. All right. Go ahead.
Just one comment from Ken. How are we doing with the recruiting in that position?
We're struggling. We're reaching out to get it posted in other places. Patrick's working hard at that. We're also trying to contact a professor at Sonoma State who works in, the accounting or finance area and get his opinion on the postings themselves. Maybe we've got them, we're looking for too much, not enough, in the wrong places, but also asking him if he has any suggestions for people who might be interested in this. So, the payroll person, yes, is retiring June 19th. We got a good temp hire that started last Thursday and is working out really well. So we've got that key position, I think, covered until we hire a permanent person in there. And I think we've gotten quite a few applications for the payroll position. It closes tomorrow.
I just wanted to say that on the accounting, it's something like an accountant position that we have posted. And the City of Roanoke Park, to Mike's understanding, has kind of struggled to find somebody in an accountant position. And I looked at their job description. It pays $10,000 a year more to the City of Roanoke Park. And I think it required 1 year of experience, and we're asking for 2. So it'll be interesting to see what the Sonoma State professor comes up with. And also, one of the people in our lab, Lisa Newsom, who's doing the farmers market outreach. Her husband is one of those professors there at Sonoma State. So I don't know. Have you already talked to somebody there?
No, I can't recall the name. I've got it back at my desk.
Okay, but you've already talked to somebody?
No, I haven't, not yet. But if you can send me his name, I'd be happy to talk to them too. I'm eager to talk to them, actually.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, moving along to the performance management status report. Any questions from commissioners regarding that?
Just one comment. Are you talking about the financials?
We're going there next.
Okay. Oh, okay.
All right. Now we're moving on to the financials. You had a comment?
My only comment is just want to make sure we take public comment when we need to. And my comment on this would be it's nice to see revenues going in a positive direction for the library.
Other comments? Before we move on to the gift policy, is there any public comment on the items that we've spoken about so far? All right. Moving to the draft gift policy. Grift policy.
Hi, this starts on page 47 of the commission packet, and I passed out the current gift policy to y'all before the meeting. It was adopted in June of 2002. So this policy, when we get it done, would be a replacement or a revision of the current gift policy. And it was recommended or noted in last year's audit that we need to update the gift policy to put a little more meat to it. And so the one you have in front of you started out with a staff group and then went to Brett, Rebecca, and myself. We got it down even, worked on it a lot more. And then, as Barbara mentioned, it came to the Finance Committee in the May Finance Committee meeting. They had some suggestions. What we really tried to do was better define what the gifts and donations that the library accept, and then once we do have them and they become our property, what we do with them after that. It also we set parameters around dollar amount levels for involvement with various people in the organization, whether it be the commission, the director, staff on down the line. And then we also wanted to make sure that it was flexible enough so the library isn't overburdened by some conditions or management costs of a gift that might come our way. So those were three of the things that we were really looking at to try to get to. As we go through here, the Finance Committee due to timing, they had 3 suggestions. They're in the bold capital in parentheses. On page 2 of 3, we wanted to put more meat into the library responsibility section, and we'll be working on all 3 of these in the next month and bring it to the Finance Committee in the June meeting. On the next page, there were 2 areas. Adding a section with some details on how we hold or invest the donated money and how we spend it. And then down at the bottom, we want to make sure that we put something in there regarding annual reporting to the commission on gifts received and spent. This is the gift policy up for discussion right now. We'd like to know if there are any questions or anything else you would like added. Like I said, we're going to be working on those 3 areas for sure in the next few weeks, and with the Finance Committee in the June meeting, and hopefully bring something more to you in the July Commission meeting.
And you're hoping that we will adopt a gift policy then in August or September?
Yes. Yep. July, okay. August, September, somewhere in there. Right. Depending
Comments, questions?
I was just interested in, and I know you put a lot of work in this already, but the types of gifts accepted, and we're talking about tangible personal property. Is that, when we use tangible, I mean, that can mean a lot of different things. Is that, and I'm just throwing this out for the Finance Committee is working on this. And what does tangible mean in this case? And I think that should be spelled out.
Well, it can mean a lot of different things, from books that come over to the counter to
a used car.
A used car. So yeah, it'd be hard to detail all those things out, but
Sure, but I guess my next the follow through on this would be, okay, we get a car. What are we set up to take something like that? So we have a gift policy, but usually when you have a gift policy like a nonprofit accepting used cars, well, there's a mechanism of what we're going to do with that used car or whatever. And I just maybe this isn't the document to talk about those things, but I think if we're having a gift policy and we're saying to the public, we'll accept these things, what are we going to do with those things and we get them, and a trust, I mean, that's a pretty big thing. Who's going to take care of the trust, who's going to manage it, things like that, I guess, and that goes within, I guess that follows through our discussion maybe around the foundation too, and where do they play in this, and I just I'm really interested in this, so I've had a lot of questions about.
No, I think that's really good. Yeah. When we were writing this, there's a lot of if-thens that can occur. What do you if someone gives you a book, then what happens to the book? And if somebody gives you a car, so we kept the policy at a high level that we accept these things, that there's agreements written, at a certain dollar threshold. But then you're totally right. We would have internal procedures in various work units that would specify the procedures to take if you're given a truckload of books or a painting or something like that. But that we didn't bring that level of detail up into the policy.
Okay. And again, not to make too fine a point, I'm just thinking, if someone gives you a complete collection of Harry Potter books versus an original Gutenberg Bible, that's a big difference. What do you do with, So I'm just throwing things out right now. I'm interested in the back end of this, So thank you for all your work.
Barbara, did you have?
I wanted to, on page 2 of 3, line 7, gift agreements may be created for any donation with a value in excess of $5,000. I wanted the Commission's input on whether that should be, shall or must or something. I think we need to be, possibly more certain about a gift of $5,000 or more. The gift agreement, my understanding is basically a letter from the director, and it says this is our understanding of your gift and how we're going to use it, and then it's signed by him. So it's a kind of a signed, contract-ish like thing, and it seems like we ought to have a certainty about when we do that.
You thinking of a higher figure?
No, I was thinking about, but it just says may be created. It seems like maybe it will be created.
Is there a reason for the may instead of the will?
Well, I think if something comes in of excess of $5,000 and the donor just says here it is, it's unrestricted, use it as you would like.
Right.
I think that's where the may comes in more than anything.
In other words, somebody could give something in excess of $5,000 and say, use it as you will, or somebody says over $5,000, they say, I want you to use it to buy the Gutenberg Bible.
Right.
Right. Okay. Or the Harry Potter books, one of the two.
First edition.
The question I have is around item on page 33, the lines, a section of some details on how we hold, invest donated funds, and how we divest and spend the funds. That seems to me to be a very important and crucial area. One of the questions I have, is part of the issue is that our special funds sit there and need to be explained. And this is kind of an accounting question to me to some degree. Is there a special accounting mechanism or division or area for something called endowments that might be different than special funds? If somebody were to endow something, that seems to me to be a different ball of wax than a special fund.
Right.
And so is that something that is important to think about or not, or am I way off base?
Well, most of the time, endowments come with real legalese and are very specific. So there are endowments. There are also, I've heard of what they call is funds working as an endowment, which I think it would be similar to what a lot of our funds are that come with restrictions that we've talked about before.
Okay.
So the terminology is, funds acting as endowments. Endowments themselves are very specific, like I said, more legal terminology than anything. But those are the types of things we can call them. Special revenue funds is, we can.
From my perspective, Tim, it's a good question because my understanding of endowments are that if somebody in my family wanted to create an endowment by leaving money to the library, it would be probably around a theme, books for children or that. But then you hope the endowment, the interest that it generates is what carries things forward. Mm-hmm. And I do think that we struggle, if somebody truly wanted to set up an endowment through the library, the way that we hold money is not conducive to endowments.
Right.
So it is something we need to look at because if you're generating, 3% interest or whatever, that's not terrific for an endowment. So it is something I think we have to look at.
Okay. And related to that, just historically, many years ago, when we first were talking about a tax initiative, as a matter of fact, we were talked about the fact that there are investment opportunities for public funds that aren't necessarily the county's fund, but that there are ways to invest public monies that are legitimate and ethical, and so that would be good information for me to know, too.
Okay. All right.
Other questions or comments from folks about this?
I just want to thank you for incorporating some of the changes that I had a couple of representatives from Sonoma Valley come to the meeting where you discussed this and you took some of their input, and I thank you for that. Mary Evelyn Arnold and Robin McCarrick came, right?
I think Mary Evelyn was the only one there.
Oh, just Mary Evelyn came to the meeting, and I appreciate that for sure. She was my predecessor here on this board, and I thank you for incorporating some of her suggestions.
All right.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you. Keep us informed.
All right.
Thanks for the work. I might also add that we have in here some samples of different gifting policies, and a piece of that, when you read them, it seems sort of different. And part of the issue is that a lot of public libraries use foundations as the way people give to the library, and our library is unique so that's why these seem to be about things rather than cash. Okay, moving right along to the strategic plan draft. Now, before we get to this, do you want to give some background, Brett, or the purpose of this document?
So tonight what I wanted to do really is just share a snapshot draft of where we were at when I got this into the commission packet, which has now been about a week ago. So we only got a written document in place within the last couple weeks. So I kind of showed you what that was as soon as it existed, like I said I would. So that's what you have in front of you tonight, but I'll ask you not to don't spend too much time beyond the front page, the priority levels, because it's still a work in progress. We still have a staff team that's working on this document. The steering committee is still working on it. I'm working on it. So it continues to morph, really, and I think it will until probably sometime in maybe early June, when it'll probably be in more or less final form. I think there's still some questions about the overall process. I mean, I hope you believe me when I say that it's been a very community-driven process. How it's worked is we didn't go to the community and ask them how to run a better library, but we did ask them, what do you value about Sonoma County? What's important to you? How can the library contribute to that? And we really looked to the community to create the priorities on that first page. Sometimes community members got into the weeds right away. They'd say, I want my holds to come faster or that. And those were totally valid, but those aren't organizational priorities. You can't say one of your priorities as a library, I guess you could, but so some of the things that the community said that were very specific, they have made it into the document at the goal or objective level, where they talk about specific kind of workflows and actions. So some of it has worked in to the document elsewhere from the community. But really, I've asked the staff, if the community says that they want their libraries to be a place of education and discovery, I have allowed the staff then to design what that looks like. So those are where the goals and objectives take form, is allowing the staff to design the work that we'll do to meet those priorities. So we're still day-to-day fleshing out the objectives and priorities. I think we'll end up with two documents. I think we'll end up with a document that's in great detail that the staff will use as a work plan to really focus us on the work that we do in the next 2 to 3 years. And then I think we'll create a public outward document that'll really condense all this into a couple pages that stress the priorities in that. So again, I wanted to share with you tonight what we've got so far, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Comments down the line? It looks like David.
I just have a general comment, and that is that in our discussion earlier about the work plan that Dan Mullen put together for us, is that, and we talked about how are we involved as commissioners. Knowing what these high-level priorities are will work for us in terms of FAQs, all being on the same page, having talking points. So I think this will help inform that, and there's a lot of nice work here. Thank you.
Barbara?
I was wondering, I like this visual on the front page where it shows customer experience in the center and all of these things around it. not being numbered, because I noticed when I got to priority 5, and I know you said don't spend too much time. Number 5 is financial sustainability, which of course, can't be the 5th one because, we won't be in business if we focus on that last. So the visual works for me better than this numbering system. And also was curious, since this customer experience seems to be so central, did we hear a lot about that from these groups, that the experience wasn't good and that we weren't getting to yes and we weren't satisfying people's needs?
No, and that, it's the opposite, really. Most folks said that the staff are wonderful, that they're helpful. But again, I think that, and this is probably the most of me in any of the priorities, but I just couldn't imagine us saying that all that we do doesn't radiate out of providing a great customer experience where that is the anchor. So I think it's more that we have room to grow, and there's more things that we can do around that. Perhaps staff do say that they want a comprehensive customer service program in place because we don't have a standard right now, and I think that does frustrate some staff. So there's things that we can do around this area, but it was put there mostly to acknowledge that all that we do is because of our public.
Reese?
Yes.
Well, a couple of studies that I've read, the librarian is the driver of the library. The books, all the things they offer, they're not really incidental, but it's the librarian that is the driver.
Right.
So this customer service one, it's really an appropriate place. It's not that we're bad, I don't think. I've never heard that.
Yeah.
But it's because librarian is the driver,
the
key.
Yep.
I'll just say, I have trouble with the word customer.
Yeah.
I like patron, personally, but it's just a personal little bias. I don't like being a guest at different markets, but I'm interested in the word customer. That's just me. I'm sorry.
I'll continue to think about that. When I was in Multnomah in Portland, Oregon, we actually surveyed our patrons, customers, and asked them what they wanted to be called. Mm-hmm. And they did say patrons. So it's something we can put a little more thought into.
It's just a little thing, but anyway.
I totally agree with you. I hate the word customer for library customer. It just...
Whatever.
One trend is to call folks that use our services members. I don't like patrons because I think that's a misnomer too, because a patron of the arts is, you have the person live upstairs and you feed them and board them, and so that we don't actually do that with the people that come in our doors. So
customer may work, or users or whatever. Anyway.
Yeah.
Members is kind of nice too, but anyway, it's just a little thing. My semantics class is coming through here. All right.
As long as we're weighing in on this one. As long as everyone wants to weigh in on this one, I will too. I prefer just to call it the library experience.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
Can I backtrack to a previous item real quick?
Sure.
I forgot to ask you all when I was sharing Dan's report, but in there's the recommendation that that the library and probably the foundation partner on an advocacy retreat where we invite in the commissions, the foundation, the labs, the friends, and bring in an expert. And it would probably be that group, every library that specializes in library advocacy, but to bring in their CEO to do workshops around advocacy. So there's a date I wanted to run by you. What? 26? I just kind of want to get a feel for if that works for most of you. You can email me about it, but it's just something we have to start planning. Pardon?
Would the meeting shut down the library?
No. It would be probably offsite, but I hope that as many of you as possible can go. So just let me know if that date works for you. That'd be helpful.
I think it's a great idea. I just want, is that going to replace the All Friends Day that's currently being planned in September? It's a replacement for that.
How close is it to that? I forgot the date.
I think somebody, I wrote down the 12th.
Okay.
I've never gotten anything on
I
it.
think it's the 12th, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
And
But that would, this
All
would
Friends Day
replace
is
it, because this would be all the friends also.
Sonoma's
They would still have their meeting, but
Oh,
this
they'd
would be
still
an
have their
additional meeting.
of September.
I'm not clear. So this would replace that?
No, it wouldn't. It would be an
A separate
additional
meeting. Okay.
happening.
All right. Thanks.
I have the 26th of September as a Saturday. Is that what we're talking about?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And I was going to maybe go to Italy, but we'll see. That's the.
No, that's what he's talking about.
What's?
I'll send
Friends
another
Day is
email
the
out to y'all
12th.
and do
It's
a do not
the,
reply to all and ask if it works for you.
What's David's word for it?
Thank you.
Anyway, that would be the advocates that combined. All right, thank you. I know a lot. Thank you.
Good, Tim.
A lot of work. I checked with Mike from the results group, and he said that this has been one of the most involved community processes for strategic plans that he's been dealing with. Okay, moving right along to the policy for procedures for commission reimbursement. This is hello, Ken. This is again just for our input. We're not adopting this at the moment, right?
No, and it is a procedure, so normally it's up to you, but normally the commission usually just adopts policy. This is just something, a procedure to get you all reimbursed. Earlier in the year, you had given it to the Finance Committee to come up with something, and it kind of got put on the back burner, but here it is now. This defines the reimbursable expenses, defines the process for getting reimbursed. Like Barbara said, there was also a form that the Finance Committee looked at the May meeting. And if this all looks good to you, I will get it in place, and I'll send you and I'll email you the form. So if you have any expenses you'd like reimbursed, we can get it going.
I have a question for Tim, because I thought you mentioned a little bit earlier today that in order to get reimbursed for some things, commissioners would have to be sure to have taken their ethics
I didn't
training.
mention it at this meeting, but that's the completion of the ethics training is one of the requirements.
Okay.
And we need to file the completion of that with Rebecca. And I know somebody who hasn't taken it yet. Me. Okay, go ahead.
It's not me. I took it. So when does this go into effect?
If you're okay with it, we can put it into effect right now or tomorrow.
Including the completion of the ethics training as well.
Yes, including the completion of the
I thought it wasn't
Do you have any
budgeted.
further?
Along with that,
So I just want to clarify that there is reimbursement for mileage to and from these monthly meetings?
Yes, that's what it's explained in here, yep. That would be part of the reimbursable expense.
To $500.
Up to 500. And what's the current, is it the federal rate? What's your mileage rate? 57?
Had it on
It's
that
on that
form.
form.
Yeah, it's the federal rate.
Okay.
And I might also add that if you're reimbursed, then you can't take it off your taxes.
Correct.
Right. Correct. Okay.
Well, that's separate.
Going
but-
along.
I just, how apropos that this is coming up with ALA coming up this month. And it's part of our memberships if we were going to join as a member. There was a handout here. Are we going to
I don't know
discuss
whether
this?
that could be, the budget for this isn't until the next year's.
Oh, is that right?
Right.
That is true.
Okay, well, that's
Yes.
what I wanted to ask.
July
Okay.
1, yes.
All right.
What if you approve it tonight, Ken and I thought that, we feel that the few requests that would come in between now and July 1st could be honored within this year's budget.
Okay.
Especially since ALA is so close. And,
Okay.
And just you talked about before, it sounds like there's some good stuff that you could all attend.
Yeah.
So does that mean $500 this year, $500 starting July 1, separate $500?
Yes.
Is that how we would interpret that?
Yes.
Okay. And I did want to point out, I think, to Joanna, whoever brought this up, that yes, it's back and forth to commission meetings, but it's also we added committee meetings because there's a lot of committee meeting stuff that's going on also.
Yeah, I think it's really good. I think it's appropriate that people, it's already a deposit of your time, but it's Sonoma County, one of the things plaguing us is our roads, and it's because we have a lot of them and things are really spread apart. So for all of us to get here, it is an expense in addition to your time. So again, though, this is not counting. So if you have $500 budget per commissioner and it goes into effect tonight, then is it retroactive for the meetings the mileage that you incurred before tonight?
I wouldn't think so, no.
Okay. And so is it a motion kind of thing that you're looking for?
Yeah, we can wait, but I think here's some more comments. Did I see some nods, hides?
Aren't we going to add that part? though?
We're going to add that part. And I think you're saying we've approved the policy of reimbursement.
Right.
We're basically just giving a nod to the procedure at this point.
Correct. So
Okay.
to make sure everyone
I'd like
knows.
to make a motion.
Would you like
they
to
can
make a
get.
motion to accept the procedure? Go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion to put this expense reimbursement policy into place today.
Okay.
And I'd like to add the bullet item for the commissioner to be reimbursed. They must have taken the ethics training. And I think that's it.
Okay. Is there a second?
I second.
All right. Is there discussion?
Once again, I will say that I don't support the policy. I realize this is just procedure. This is the form you fill out, and this is how you do it. $5,500. We, as volunteers, if we need help with mileage, we should go back to the people who appointed us. It is not used. Other commissioners use mileage reimbursement, or they use the money for a facilitator for the entire group, but not so that they can go and sign up to be ALA members or any of those things. And I don't support the policy, but I realize what you're presenting is the procedure, and I understand that.
Thank you. Other comments? Any public comment on this procedure? There's a motion on the floor. All of those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
All right. That being it, we have the procedure. I believe we're making record time today. We're now moving to the lab appointments. So moved for blanket appointments.
Second.
Yes.
So are there two items on this?
Let's do the first motion. That they.
I would like to make a motion that we appoint Julia Hart as the Sonoma Valley Youth member.
Is there a second? Second. Public comment? All those in favor of draft motion 1?
Aye.
Opposed?
Did we have a second, Chair?
Yes, we did. Who was the second?
Linda
Okay.
Garcia.
Linda Garcia.
I just want to thank you all again for supporting my youth lab appointee, Julia. Thank you. It was a big
All right, motion number 2. Do I have so moved?
Whoa.
Yes.
Thank you for moving it along. However, I want to make a change to the appointment on item 2 for Lorna Sheridan in my district. She is not seeking a second term, unfortunately.
So removing Lorna.
So please remove Lorna from your motion.
Okay. Thank you. With the person removed, the motion is on the table. Has it been seconded?
I second.
Let's give it to Paul that time. All right. It was a tie, but I'm going to call it. Paul. All right. All those in favor? Opposed?
Aye.
No. Okay. We are now at that favorite part of the meeting where everybody is folding up their papers, and we need to go for the lab report, right?
We still need to approve the minutes.
Pardon me?
The minutes.
We still have to approve the minutes, right?
So I'll move that we approve the minutes.
Second? As corrected, yes.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. All right. Items for the commission report.
I think I think one thing is we should talk about the ALA conference in the report. Just of course, by the time they get it, the ALA conference will probably be over. But I think this one item about the nuts and bolts for trustees, friends, and foundations is something really important. I would encourage anybody that can go to the conference attend that, because we have talked about doing a retreat for the commission, and I think this particular all-day workshop at ALA applies to what we're going to talk about at our retreat. So I intend to go to this. I think, Tim, you're going to...
The Friday?
The Friday, yeah.
Yes,
the
I'm
nuts
going.
and bolts for trustees, friends, and foundations. It's a day of information and resource sharing, roundtable discussions, and learning opportunities. I think it'd be appropriate for us as commissioners to go to that. So,
And I'm wondering about quorum issues.
As long as you guys don't talk about CHOP together, you're fine.
Okay. We can't talk about CHOP together. We have to be at different round tables. All right? How many people are thinking they might attend? Okay. All right. Anything else for the monthly?
We didn't get one. In reading through this, we decided we don't have to have one every month, right? So all the items that we had on the last agenda, those haven't been written about, right? So we have lots to carry forward from the last time. Yeah.
But what's significant, I think we should mention that the strategic plan is nearing completion. Anything else?
I think the gift policy needs to be mentioned so that we can make sure that people know that they can give gifts to the library.
Okay.
And that we have a work plan for community outreach.
Right. Other things? I'd like to figure out a way to keep you another hour and 5 minutes, but but given that we're not going to do that, the meeting is adjourned. Yeah, but I want to see...